I think this is one of those moments that Luke said, the passage says Luke 15, but as I have been thinking and hearing you all and praying, is it all right if we go another direction this morning?
Certainly.
Is that all right? Psalm 7. Psalm 7. If you have it. It said, O Lord my God, I take refuge. Save me from all of my pursuers and deliver me, lest like a lion they tear my soul apart and render it into pieces with none to deliver. O Lord my God, if I have done this, if there is wrong in my hands, if I have repaid my friend with evil or plundered my enemy without cause, let the enemy pursue my soul and overtake it, and let him trample my life to the ground and lay my glory in the dust. Arise, O Lord, in your anger, lift up against the fury of my enemies. Awake me. You have appointed a judgment. Let the assembly of the peoples be gathered about you. Over it return on high. The Lord judges the peoples. Judge me, O Lord, according to my righteousness, according to the integrity that is in me. O let the evil of the wicked come to an end, and may you establish the righteousness. Though you who test the minds and the hearts. O righteous God, my shield is with God, who saves the upright in heart. God is a righteous judge, and God who feels indignation every day. If a man does not repent, God will rent with his sword. He will with his bent and ready his bow. He has prepared for him his deadly weapons, making his arrows fiery shafts. Behold, the wicked man conceives evil and is pregnant with mischief and gives birth to lies. He makes a pit, digging it out, and falls into the hole that he has made. His mischief returns upon his own head, and his own skull has violent descends. But I will give the Lord the thanks due his righteousness, and I will sing praise to him, to the name of the Lord Most High. This is the word of the God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Again, my name is Ryan. I've just recently moved from Brooklyn, Chattanooga, Tennessee, to plant a church, and I'm so thankful and glad to be with you all this morning. All of us have experienced injustice. All of us. And whether it is where injustice has infiltrated our home, has breached our doors, has come in through a diagnosis, or a loss of a job, or a loved one's death, we've all experienced it. And whether we're not experiencing it now, we can easily look at the world around us and say, this world is an unjust place. That what we see and what we experience and what we look at as we turn on the news, or as we break open the morning paper, or as, if you're more technologically savvy, we open up our Reddit app, or whatever it might be, we can look at the world around us and say, this is actually not the way that it's supposed to be. There's something wrong happening. There's something wrong here. And all of us have experienced that. And this psalm is not the greatest hits, right? This is not the psalm that 23 or 91. This is a quiet psalm. This is a psalm that sometimes we overlook, but this is a psalm that David is crying for justice in the midst of experiencing injustice. This is a psalm for us. We know that the psalms are prayers. This psalm here is filled with emotion. It's filled with words that we wouldn't typically say. But It is a psalm that is real and that is honest. It is a psalm that David looks at the world around him while experiencing personal injustice and saying, this is not right. Have you ever been there in your life? You ever experienced that? We all have. All of us. And in moments of injustice, what you and I want to do is we want to exactly stand up and say, hey, stop. Stop now. This is not the way this is supposed to be. But we see David doing that, but also doing something else. And injustice can have many faces, right? We can see it play itself out in many different ways. A child forced to grow up in an abusive home. The family that we just spoke about, he poured gasoline all over his body. It's unjust. A political system that only allows a few people to say what goes on, but silences other voices. Denial of the basic necessities of life. Severe human right injustices like genocide, slavery. And these are kind of extreme and gross injustices, right? We can look at these and go, that's gross. That's not right. But there's also more subtle ones, such as denial into a group, no access into a group. All of us have walked into his place, and we know that we're not in the inner circle, right? We're not in that place, and that feels unjust. Or smear campaigns like Sanballat and Tobiah, right? They had blogs. They had Twitter accounts, right? And they were spewing venom about things that were not true. All of us have experienced that. What? Who said what about me, huh? I didn't know that. I didn't do that. I wasn't there. We've all been there. And this psalm helps us to get at what we are supposed to do when we get there. Now, we don't know a lot about this psalm, but there are some clues that help us understand what David is experiencing. For instance, at the beginning, this says that he sang this to the Lord concerning the words of Cush, a Benjaminite. Now, this is the only time that the word Cush is used here. I looked. It's the only time. And so that's not very helpful, because we don't know anything about him. But what can help us understand maybe a little bit more is that he was a Benjaminite. Now, there is another very important Benjaminite earlier in the scriptures, and his name was Saul. Saul was of the camp of the Benjaminites, and Saul was the king that everybody wanted, right? He had big, broad shoulders. He has a nice chiseled line face. He had a lot of swagger. He knew how to take over a room. And this was the one that everybody said, that's a king. That is what a king looks like, and that's the one that we want. Well, that wasn't the rightful king. God chooses, right? And God chose a little red-headed, freckle-haired boy that was on the backwoods, taking down lions and bears, that was in a relationship with Yahweh. They chose that one. But see, Saul didn't really like being kicked off the throne. He didn't like not being in the place of power in which he was sitting. And so he began to pursue this man, David. And Cush was a Benjaminite. And what the Old Testament tells us is that the Benjaminites stayed solely within the camp of Saul. So maybe this man Cush is getting on his Twitter account and saying, hey, David's not the right king. Saul is. He's not the one. Maybe he's calling him out for being a punk, running away from his son and hiding in caves. We don't know. But David says in verse 3, it says, if I have done this. This is the things that Cush is actually saying that's not true. We've all had this in our life, right? If I'm actually doing what they say, well then judge me, but I'm not doing those things. And this is where David is. He's experiencing injustice. He's experiencing people that are saying things against him that are not true at all. And what I want us to do, just for the few more minutes, is I want us to walk through the progression of the psalm, where David is crying out for injustice, and he's focusing on his enemies, and he's looking at these things, but then all of a sudden, there's a bit of a turn where his gaze then begins to turn upward to God and says, hey, but you're the righteous judge. You're the king of all things. You're the one that's going to deliver me. And then it ends in thankful praise. And so I just want to walk through this progression of this psalm together. Look at verse 3 if you still have your Bibles open. Not 3. That's wrong. Look at verse 1 and 2. Hey, I'm doing this on the fly, so let's go this together, huh? Verse 1 and 2. And it says, my Lord, my God, I take refuge in you. Save me from all of my pursuers and deliver me, lest like a lion they tear my soul apart, rendering it into pieces with none to deliver. Now, the concept here and the idea here is simple when I'm about to say it, but actually living it out is the difficulty that we have. When experiencing justice, pain, and difficulty, David does what? He goes to God first. He takes it first to God. Now, you hear that and you say, that's where I go. But how often when you and I experiencing that true injustice in our heart, that's not typically the first place that we respond or go to. We delve into a book, a novel to numb it. We go on a walk to try and get away. We binge watch Netflix, or we get on the internet and we buy things because it gives us comfort. We try to do anything that we can to numb us or to distance ourselves from the pain that we're experiencing. And sometimes, if it's injustice that brings shame or brings difficulty, we don't really want to take that to God. That's hard to bring your lust or your addiction or to bring the pain and the heartache that you have to the holy God, but that's where He wants you to go. You'll notice that the elders this morning of the search committee, when you came in, didn't stop you at the door and say, how are you emotionally? Are you okay? I mean, have you forgiven everybody? Have you actually prayed this weekend or prayed? I mean, how's your spiritual life? Because we really don't want you to bring your pain and your struggle and your difficulty in here, because this is a holy place, right? They didn't do that, and the reason they didn't is because they want us to all understand that this is where we bring it. This is where we bring the struggle. This is where we bring the difficulty. This is where we bring the joy and the victory and the excitement. This is where we bring all and the psychosomatic, big word, you can use it later, psychosomatic whole. I learned it in seminary, it cost me a lot of money. Psychosomatic whole that we are to God. Everything that we are, we bring to Him, even the shame. And this is what David shows us. And did you hear the emotional state that he's in? He says, they are like lions that are tearing my soul apart. Maybe you've been there. I know I have. Where I literally feel ripped to shreds. Like I don't know that I can go on one more step. Maybe the search committee is feeling like that right now. 2 years. Man, you guys are a scrappy bunch. I like you. Keep going. Because God will be faithful. God will bring, but in the midst of the injustice, in the midst of the difficulty, we continue to take it to God. We continue to turn to Him and say, you're the righteous judge. You're the one. We're not in control, but we are going to keep pursuing this. We're going to keep moving forward. We're going to keep showing up. See what's going to happen. There was a situation about a year ago that I got a phone call. I was living in Brooklyn at the time, and my sister calls me, and my We come from a broken home, very broken home. We had a lot of pain in our house, even though it started out like seventh heaven. My dad was a pastor, and we lived in this great little house, and everything was good, and then all of a sudden, injustice intruded into our home. And it came through adultery and divorce, and it got really ugly. And my sister was deeply affected by that. We all were, but it formed the narrative of her life, where she would make decisions based on the pain that she experienced through that. She calculatingly thought through her husband, not in certain aspects like a lot of women, but he's a safe place for me because of X, Y, and Z. You know, the ladies know what I'm talking about. I have X, Y, and Z. He's a safe place. And about 2 years ago, she called me and she said, "Ryan, it happened. I found out he's been with other women." And my response wasn't this right here. My response was, "And I'm going to murder him." Just stay there, make sure he's close, give me the hotel number, and I will make a sneak attack. And for days, I couldn't let it go. The voices were in my head. It was a weight on my chest. I don't sit in a lotus position and hum. I don't know about you. I don't really sit, and quietly do yoga to think through this process. I vent, I pace, I scream, I do all of these things. And Erin had experienced a week of that. And finally she came to me and she said, "Ryan, you got to step away. You got to get a little perspective." We see David in this transition with his enemies ever before his face. The injustice he is experiencing. He's talking about his enemies. They're coming to tear my soul apart like lions. And then all of a sudden he says, "But wait. You're my shield. You're my righteous judge." He steps back. There are times and moments and seasons of our life where you and I have to just take a step back and get a little perspective.